Do you really want to know whether someone wants to do business with you, or do you just want them to do business with you? Do you want to get the close? Do you want to get the numbers in your system? Do you want to move on to the next? Or do you want to ask some questions and find some real pain? I hope it's the second option. Let's do that next. Robert Perry is here on Purpose Under Pressure. Well, welcome back. My name's Brian, and this is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about developing sales and leadership success on purpose and under pressure. It's brought to you by the professional sales and leadership training team at Sandler by the Ruby Group. You'll find them in Akron and Columbus, Ohio. They're also in Jacksonville, Florida. They're in Capital Region, New York, up and down the coast, and they do their work for companies all across this great land. They do it on purpose. They do it with a plan. They do it with a strategy, and they do it with your ends in mind. Their ideas, their techniques, their ways of doing things the right way. And what are you trying to accomplish? What is your team trying to accomplish? You put that all together, you got a goal, you got a plan. And that's where Sandler by the Ruby Group really shines. And you're going to love introducing them to your people. You're going to love meeting them, and you're going to love what they have to say about your organization. And so go ahead and trust me. Get in touch with them and see what happens. You are going to enjoy that connection if nothing else happens after that. You can do so online at therubygroup.sandler.com. The Ruby Group, actionable strategies for today's toughest business challenges. And we are so glad that they are our sponsor on Purpose Under Pressure. So let's get cooking. So pain. I want to talk about pain. No one likes pain, but it's there for a reason, right? It shows up as symptoms of something that's wrong. It isolates the problem spots so that you can do something about it. And when you're talking about sales or really any kind of a transaction, any kind of getting to the A to B, we need to know where the pain is. We need to know where the buyer's pain is. If there's no pain, then there's no need. And yet some sellers will keep on selling anyway. And if there's no need, there just should not be a sale. So let's talk about pain with Sandler by the Ruby Group partner and trainer, Robert Perry. Robert, welcome to Purpose Under Pressure.
Good afternoon, Brian. Thanks for having me.
I'm really glad you're here, especially when it comes to talking about one of my favorite topics in sales. It's pain. And am I right here, Robert? No pain, no sale. I said that. Is that right?
That is exactly right. In fact, I'm uniquely here this month or this year, I'll be hosting an advanced pain funnel techniques workshop. And the workshop is really designed to really establish sales individuals so that they get a better understanding of transitioning that buyer from whatever surface challenges they may have into understanding the complexities of how it affects the business. But real pain, to your point of no sale, it only occurs when there's some personal impact. Now, I'll spend a lot of time looking at advanced techniques to go further down what's known as the Sandler pain funnel.
Yeah.
And by further down, it's really to the area of the buyer understanding their personal impact, but all of us creating as sales individuals, the decision urgency that's needed for the buyer to say, I need to make a change, and that the change needs to happen now.
And he's got to feel that. The buyer has to feel that deep inside in a personal way before they want to do it. And before we dive deeper, let's just set up the idea. A buyer's not going to just run in front of a salesperson and say, I need to fix this right now. I mean, that's the phone call you get that every salesperson loves. That's the slam dunk. And you just, transaction done. But when you're talking to someone who doesn't realize they have pain, and they even say, look, I have this issue. I do struggle with this. Yes, I do. What you're saying is that we need to go deeper. And too many salespeople will stop. Oh, you need that? Okay, here's this. And we try to connect the dots. But you're talking deeper. So tell me more about what it looks like when the salesperson hasn't gone deep enough. And then we can talk about how to get there.
Certainly. One of the key indicators that I like to say to myself is when I'm in a prospecting meeting and the buyer can readily articulate the challenges that they're going through currently.
Just spit them off like this.
Yeah. That is a quick cheat sheet for Robert to slow this thing down. That's where that person in the company is currently. That is a symptom of something deeper and greater going on. And all sales individuals watching this today need to tell themselves, we need to go deeper. So, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned the business impact, but the one thing I want us to all understand is that we do not sell our products and or services to companies. We sell them to individuals. So, to that point in time, individuals buy from individuals. So, what are the challenges in this individual's world that they're trying to avoid? Is it the pain of how they interact with leadership? The problem needs to get solved immediately? Or is it the pain that's associated with perhaps financial gains, bonuses lost?
Like on their own, you mean, like their own paycheck and their bonuses that they're taking home?
Correct. That is exactly correct. So that's our strategy, but we're spending a lot of time going to go further and deeper in creating emotional labels around what they've indicated to us. So emotional labels being the frustrations they're having with their existing vendor or lead times, the worries and concerns they may have about not being able to develop or get their products to their end user in a timely fashion. As sales individuals, it's just not enough for us to collect information so that we can report back our solution. Our job is to sit there and help co-create a solution that the buyer can live with. And that really has us creating the sense of urgency around those emotional labels of frustration, disappointment. In fact, our buyers are just overwhelmed.
The buyer's not just going to share where they're overwhelmed or where they're frustrated or where they're emotional. That's personal stuff. And the buyer's going to stop. So, and a lot of salespeople will, as soon as the buyer gives a little bit of pain, they'll say, okay, good, I'm in, let's go. Here's what the cost. This is, and they go home and put it in the CRM. This is a slam dunk, right? And they tell their boss, but they haven't got the personal pain. Robert, how do you get deeper? Give me an example of one or two type questions or something advanced type questions. You're not going to make us experts today.
Yeah.
But what would Robert Perry say to say, that's interesting. You feel that, but let's go deeper. How would you do that?
Well, oftentimes, maybe seasoned representatives, those who've been out there in the field 10, 20 years, they have asked questions around financial implications. So, for instance, what's the cost of inaction if we don't solve this problem? And once the buyer gives them that information, bang, they're off and running to put together a proposal or a solution that matches what the prospect gave them or the buyer gave them.
Yeah.
But going deeper and further and having advanced skill sets gives us the opportunity to really expand and ask additional questions around the costs of inactivity. We can start out, how much is this costing you? How is this impacting your business? What things are we missing because of this? What toll is this taking, financial or emotional, on you, the buyer?
Now you're getting personal.
Now we're getting personal. But we can go even further. If nothing changes, what happens then? What happens next? And pause. Silence will be your differentiator here.
What does that mean, Robert?
Because too oftentimes as sales individuals, we try to fill the gaps of silence because we're trying to protect our buyer's okayness. For instance, I asked a tough question. Maybe they don't know the answer. So therefore, I'll fill in by asking a gentler question.
Take them off the hook.
Take them off the hook.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Create uncomfortable silence. And from that uncomfortable silence, you will start to find more clarity around their feelings. Because remember, we don't want them to tuck those away. We want those out on the table. And if they come out on the table, we can create a solution together in order to solve your challenges or issues within your organization.
Do buyers ever get upset or angry when you get touching those spots? I imagine sometimes you could feel like you go too far, but I bet they still want to answer you. We're all human beings, right? Do you ever go
Yeah.
too far?
I would tell you, it's not the question of going too far necessarily for me or upsetting the balance of the conversation. I would say we as sales individuals don't go far enough because we
Mm.
create our own obstacles and limitations to wanting to ask tougher questions. The average sales representative roughly asks about 2.2 questions in any given scenario with a buyer.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
2.2 questions. And then they're quoting it, giving a
And they're
proposal.
quoting it off and running. For instance, Brian, hey, tell me
Uh,
a little bit about what's going on in your world. You might respond back to me, hey, we've got some real trouble with lead times. Lead times, how long has this been a problem? Well, seemingly over the last few weeks. Well, I can understand that. Would it be all right if I shared with you my company's lead times and how we get products to you in a way faster than your current vendor? So, right there, that example, Brian, you see, I just
that's
switched
typical.
into, after two questions, into let me sell something.
Yeah.
But when you partner with Sandler or any one of the franchises across the country, you will find greater depth and clarity around the answers that we're getting back because you're leaning in and inquiring and gaining more information than you ever have before. Trust me, I hear it from sales representatives all the time. They're locked and loaded to not talk, but to gain information. And when the timing's right, that's when we will share what the proposal or the solution looks like that we both agree on, the buyer and the salesperson.
And I want to share an experience with you and see if this rings true. Because in
Yep.
my experience being a Sandler trained salesperson, when I go deeper, not
Yep.
because I want to make the sale, but when I go deeper because I want to understand the problem and I want to understand the person on the other side of the table, that
Yeah.
person respects me more. I mean, we're all human. He or she likes being treated like a human. He or she cares that I cared enough to ask that deeper question. And by pushing deeper and really understanding, I'm doing a better job for myself, but I'm also servicing my customer exponentially better and more professionally and even more personally. Is that your experience as well?
One of the key things you said in all of that, Brian, was you're servicing the customer better and differently. Many of us in sales, business development, revenue drivers, if you will, we want to be more consultative. We want to be known as consultants. Consultants inquire and dig more, and they're very comfortable asking the tough questions.
Mhm.
If you want to be consultative in your sales, it's not about the understanding of how your product or services produce or work. Good to know. But consultative sales takes into account how the buyer or the listener is understanding through the lens of their problem.
That's one of the first things I learned when I spoke with the folks at Sandler probably 7, 8 years ago was this idea of the pain funnel. And it's basic and elemental, but it's also, as you're saying, it's so much deeper than
Yeah.
that. And I would tell people that are listening or watching right now, if you're a salesperson or you are running a team of salespeople that are asking 2.2 questions per meeting, that is a timely pain point for you to reach
Yep.
out to these folks at
Yeah.
Sandler by the Ruby Group and
Right.
at least talk about the pain funnel and figure out if that makes sense for you, because it just takes more questions than that. You wouldn't ask your fiance or your girlfriend 2 questions and then ask her to marry you. Right, right. Here, 2 questions. Do you like hiking? Do you like Chinese food? Okay, let's get hitched. That wouldn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's how some people do it. Robert, you're available on LinkedIn, I believe, and people can reach out to you and talk to you about that.
Absolutely. I'm just going to leave with this one
Yeah.
point. Most representatives stop in their questioning once they understand the problem. But those who understand advanced Sandler pain funnel question techniques, the elite, they stop the urgency that they would create. They stop when the prospect starts to feel the problems. So with that, Brian, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having me on. I enjoy being on your show.
I'm really glad you're on the show too. And it's another example, Robert, of how I think people think sales is easy. And maybe it is if you're not doing it right. Maybe you
Yeah,
just call and you talk and you pitch and you propose and you close and you move on to the next one, maybe. But I think if you're doing it right, if you're doing it on purpose, that's what this show is all about. I think you care about some of these things and you realize how difficult it is to be a truly professional salesperson. And I think Robert Perry, he's a partner and trainer at Sandler by the Ruby Group of kind of identifying some of those symptoms, some of those opportunities to dig deeper. We talked about the idea of silence, letting that be. We talked about 2.2 questions per. If your folks aren't doing it right, I hope that you'll reach out to Sandler by the Ruby Group. Thank you. That was Robert Perry. He is a partner and trainer at Sandler by the Ruby Group. I'm glad he was on the show today. So deep and so good. And folks, I thank you for being here too. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And if any of this inspires you at all to learn anything more about Sandler by the Ruby Group, I hope that you will reach out to them. They are sponsors of this show. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. Like I said, the show is brought to you by the Ruby Group, actionable strategies for today's toughest business challenges. Until next time, no matter how high the pressure gets, be silent and stay on purpose.